The story I'm about to tell you has captivated people for hundreds of years, and it all stems from an encounter that took place in rural England during the 12th century. The story takes place in the small farming community known as Woolpit, sometime between the years 1150 and 1180. And although the exact date has been lost to time, for most residents of Woolpit, this particular day started like any other. But for those working the surrounding fields and boundaries of the village, they would uncover something so bizarre that their discovery would continue to be spoken about over 1,000 years later. The first thing that you need to know about this story is that during the 12th century, wolves were a very real threat in England. So places like Woolpit often were surrounded by wolf pits, and that's actually where the name Woolpit comes from, the Old English wolf pit. Fun fact for you there. So on this particular day, when the field workers reached a nearby pit after hearing an unusual noise, they were utterly and completely stunned because they weren't met by the panicked stare of a frightened wolf pup, but by the confused expressions of two children who were dressed in bizarre clothing and had pale green skin. Years later, this encounter would be documented by a local historian, a man named Ralph of Coggeshall. During harvest, while the reapers were employed in gathering the produce of the fields, two children, a boy and a girl, completely green in their persons and clad in garments of a strange colour and unknown materials, emerged from these wolf pits. Things became even more peculiar when the townsfolk tried to communicate with the children because they didn't speak English, and in fact they spoke in a language no one had ever heard. And in all the accounts written about the children, the language was described as gibberish. The townsfolk had no idea what to do with these children, so perplexed and confused by their obscure appearance and unable to communicate with them, they did the only thing that they could think of. They handed the children off to the authorities, and in this case, that was the Lord of the land, Sir Richard de Colm. Sir Richard took the children in and raised them as his own, but this wasn't without challenges. The Green children wouldn't eat any food, and they were completely repulsed by almost anything presented to them, until one day they discovered some green beans growing in a nearby garden. The children rushed to the ground, tore up the beans and ate them in their entirety, and before long they began eating the food that the villagers offered them, and over time they began to lose the green of their skin. Some weeks later, the boy grew sick, and local healers couldn't figure out what was wrong with him, and over the course of the next few days he became progressively weaker until he died. The girl, on the other hand, seemed to flourish under the villagers' care, and as she grew older, she learned the English language and told the people of Woolpit a strange story about their homeland.
The sun does not rise upon our countrymen. Our land is little cheered by its beams. We are contented with that twilight which, among you, precedes the sunrise or follows the sunset. Moreover, a certain luminous country is seen, not far distant from ours, and divided from it by a very considerable river.
Now for me, this passage conjures a really surreal and ethereal landscape, a dim twilighted land bathed in perpetual half-light. But when asked how she came to be in Woolpit, she said,
On a certain day, when we were feeding our father's flocks in the fields, we heard a great sound, such as we are now accustomed to hearing at St. Edmund's when the bells are chiming.
Now, it's important to note that St. Edmund's was the local church at Woolpit, so what she's referring to there are the bells of St. Edmund's Church chiming.
And whilst listening to the sound in admiration, we became, as it were, entranced and found ourselves among you in the fields where you were reaping.
Later in life, she recounted the name of her homeland as St. Martin's, and this is very important to keep in mind, because although a lot of people out there speculate that the children's green skin, strange clothes, and unintelligible language are a sure sign that they came from space, aka, aliens, today there are actually a few possible explanations for the children's origin. Fornham St. Martin was a nearby village, and it was separated from Woolpit by a river. What's even more compelling about this, and maybe even more of a pointer to the fact that the Green Children were likely not aliens, was the fact that it was home to a large settlement of Flemish immigrants and mercenaries who were brought over to fight in young Henry's rebellion against his father under the command of the Earl of Leicester. Now, I probably just said a bunch of stuff and you're like, what are you talking about? In a nutshell, it was a huge rebellion during the 12th century when young Henry, who was the son of King Henry II, rebelled against his father. This whole mess involved parts of Europe. I'm not a historian, this isn't a history channel, but look it up. It's a really messy period of English history, but it involved the Dutch and the French and mercenaries and just horrific battles, lots of casualties on both ends. And one of the most significant battles during that rebellion, well, that happened at St. Martin's in the year 1173. So that is within the range that the Green Children of Woolpit appeared. The year was 1173, and St. Martin's became a bloody battleground for the rebellion, which resulted in the death of most, if not all, of the Flemish settlers. So my question to you is this: is it possible that the Green Children of Woolpit were actually Flemish orphans of battle? Because to a 12th century English peasant, it's easy to see how you could mistake Flemish for gibberish. And there's no offense intended for any Dutch subscribers or people watching this video who speak Flemish, but to a 12th century peasant, like, they would have never heard anything like that. And it's also not impossible to consider that the children were suffering from some unknown illness that affected their pigmentation, similar to diseases like jaundice. Lost and hungry, they stumble upon Woolpit, and like many childhood memories, the girl's retelling of her youth became hazy over the years. Dreams and memories combine to paint a picture of an ethereal homeland. And as to why she can't recall it, how did she get here? She just appeared here. Why can't she remember the battle of this journey? Well, there are many cases out there of memory loss directly tied to PTSD, and the trauma of witnessing a great battle at such a young age, especially a medieval battle, that is trauma. So it makes sense that she can't remember how she ended up there. And I think it's quite likely that the bells that she heard, that in her story she was listening to them and she appeared in Woolpit, they might have been the bells of St. Martin's chiming as they were attacked by King Henry II's army. That's it for today. So let me know your theories on the Green Children of Woolpit. Also, if you enjoyed today's story, please go ahead and like this video. And would you consider subscribing? Maybe you want to see more content. Maybe you liked it that much. It'd be a huge deal for me. So I really appreciate it. Helps the channel grow. Helps me put more content out there. Until next time, see ya.